Okay, this is for exam 3 for my Adelphi University students. This is going to be on muscle physiology and intro to neurology. Make sure you know the difference between the central neural system and the peripheral neural system. And, in the CNS, remember, it's the brain and the spinal cord, and the peripheral neural system is everything outside of that. You should be aware that if we're talking about the cranial nerves, and we know that there's 12 pairs, or spinal nerves, and we know that there's 31 pairs, that's all peripheral neural system. The difference between the ANS and the CNS, the autonomic neural system and the somatic neural system, in terms of voluntary and involuntary. You should know the two different branches of the ANS, sympathetic and parasympathetic, as well as their levels, which is the thoracolumbar outflow and which is the craniosacral outflow, and the levels of that. What is the cranial nerves involved with parasympathetic and what sacral segments? You should know what the neuron is. You should also know what a nucleus is, a ganglia, a tract, and a nerve. We also went over what a subluxation is, that it's a structural or a functional or pathological articulate change of the spinal column that interferes with the transmission of mental impulses from the brain down the spinal cord out to every cell, tissue, organ, and system of the body. And subluxations can be anything that creates an interference, whether it be a disc problem, a muscle imbalance, scoliosis, anything, tumors, fractures. Okay, and we know that if one does have a subluxation, that it will interfere with the well-being of an individual, from the cellular level all the way up to the into the organism. The different parts of a neuron: dendrites, soma, and axon. And at the end of an axon, we know that we have an axon terminal, which has synaptic end bulbs and what is contained within them. The difference between afferent and efferent, ascending and descending. The structural and functional classification of neurons. Where do we find unipolar neurons, bipolar, and multipolar neurons? You should know the neuroglial cells, the astrocyte, oligodendrocyte, Schwann cell, ependymal cell, and microglial cells. You'll see a nice matching section on that. And we know that the neural system is the first system that develops around day 18 or so. You should know about multiple sclerosis and what type of autoimmune condition it is in relationship to myelin. What does sympathetic and parasympathetic do? What does it speed up? What does it slow down? The functions of myelin. The endomysium, epimysium, and perimysium of muscles. What are tendons? The different parts of a sarcomere. So make sure you're familiar with the T-tubule, the sarcoplasmic reticulum, the triad. What is actin? What is myosin? What are the regulatory proteins, the contractile proteins, the structural proteins? So if I ask all the following are contractile proteins except for, or all the following are regulatory proteins except for, which one, you can pick it out. I know all the different components of actin, the difference between dark meat and white meat on chickens, why there's a difference, the difference between white fibers and red fibers, slow twitch fibers and fast twitch fibers. The function of the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Be able to put the order in sequence of how a contraction takes place, starting with the electrical, like an action potential, and acetylcholine being released in that synaptic cleft, and that has to bind to the muscle membrane, and when that sodium channel opens, what rushes in, and that whole flow chart. Make sure you can put them in order. We know where ATP comes from and what it's used for in terms of muscle contraction, and what glycolysis is. We talked about ATP and the relationship of CPK, creatine phosphokinase. I would know what that is. The different types of contraction, concentric, eccentric, isometric. And you should go over what an origin is, what an insertion is, agonist, antagonist, synergist, and innervation. And one of the things that I didn't go over in class was we did go over the NMJ, the neuromuscular junction, but all of the voluntary control of every muscle function comes from a part of the cortex, a part of the brain called the precentral gyrus. So from the precentral gyrus of your cerebrum, that's where all of your motor control originates from. And all of your sensory information, as it ascends up to the brain, its final destination is at the post-central gyrus of the cerebrum. So precentral gyrus of the cerebrum is where all of your motor information originates, and the post-central gyrus is where all of your sensory information ends up. Okay, so there, that is 50 questions. Looks like it's all multiple choice, one or two true and false, and one of the questions will probably have pick all that apply. Okay, and you should do well on this exam. Okay, good luck.